Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway. Welcome back, guys. I'm sure you've been following the big news about the Louvre. Claudine's been on several news outlets talking about it on American television, French television, very exciting stuff. And Claudine's going to tell us even more about the updates about what's going on with the theft.
Yeah, I can't believe that this was 2 weeks ago yesterday. It feels like it's a month ago.
I know. It feels like it was yesterday. Like so many things have happened since.
Well, I mean, you can't say, we could say it was last month because now we're in November.
It's crazy. This year's flying by.
I know, it's insane. I literally already feel like, okay, tomorrow's January. That's just in my mind how I'm already into the calendar.
I feel the same. I just can't even look anymore.
No, it's going too fast. But so it's 2 weeks ago yesterday. Since then, we did an update last Monday on where we're at, and we are doing this. We're recording this the day that it's released. Like literally, we'll release it in like as soon as we're done because we want to make sure we have the most up-to-date news. And I got home and searched real quick to make sure there wasn't anything breaking. So hopefully nothing happens while we're recording. But there have been more arrests in the case. And if you haven't listened to the last 2 weeks, we have been talking about the heist of the Louvre that happened on October 19th. Who doesn't know about this at this time? I think there's been every meme and AI and joke that there is in the world about it. But it happened on a Sunday morning at 9:30 in the morning on October 19th. And 4 people, 2 gentlemen that were on high-powered scooters, and then 2 that went up and into the Galerie d'Apollon, stealing what was 9 pieces of jewels that belonged to some of them, including some of the crown jewels, and then they dropped one on the way out. So since then, there was 2 arrests on the Saturday, the 26th, we talked about last week. And then just last Wednesday, we had the first time that the prosecutor, a woman named Laure Bacol, she is the prosecutor in charge of the whole thing. And she, is overseeing these 100 investigators, everything that's going on. She last Wednesday night did a press conference, and it was very short. She took a few questions, but, didn't go into a whole ton of details. She said what she could say. And then the next morning, we wake up in the morning, and there were 5 more arrests overnight. So it's quite exciting.
Yeah, 5 more. I didn't realize there had been so many. Holy cow.
Yeah, so there's 5 more. And, the 2 times, the first 2 arrests that happened, almost, a week to the day. And then when they had these 5, I was actually right near the Louvre when I saw the news. And so, but it makes me so happy when they do get these arrests, because then I think it's getting us closer to maybe finding the actual jewels. So they arrested 5. Basically, like right after she did the press conference, I think it was at 6:00 that night. And at 8:30, they apprehended these 5 other, thieves. 4 of them they arrested together. They were standing outside the Jean Bouin Stadium, which is where the Paris FC was playing the Lyonnais soccer football team. And it is just in the 16th arrondissement. So that is where they arrested them. It was plainclothes officers. Basically, just these guys were in line, guys, and we know of one woman that was in the group. They were just in line to go into the match, and the plainclothes officers, apparently just without any There wasn't any hubbub or anything. They just basically walked up to them and took them out of line and took them in. And then that same evening, somebody was arrested in their home in the north of Paris. So they could hold them for 3 days. And so for 3 days they could hold them. And then at the end of those 3 days, they have to decide, are we going to bring a conviction against them, or we have to let them go. So over the weekend on Saturday and Sunday, three of them were actually released without any charges, but two of them were held, and one of them is the operator of the scooter, the high-powered scooter. Now, when we say scooter here in France, there's scooters that are like, some people call like the trottinette, where you just stand on it. Some people call those scooters, or scooter like you and Giuseppe have. These are called scooters, but if you saw them, you would think they're motorcycles. They're like big black ninja-looking things.
Yeah, I call them like Vespas, kind of.
You would think that they were. Sometimes you see them and they have three wheels, and those are really dorky. But these are like big, black, scary looking ones, not like ones that you'd see, Vespa scooters. So they arrested one of those gentlemen. We've learned over the next couple of days that one of the arrested was a woman, and it was the girlfriend of one of the scooter drivers that they arrested, and they have children together.
Oh, wow. The whole family's involved.
So yeah, and they found her DNA inside what they call the gondola of that furniture lift, the little box that they were in that also folds down, it's flat. And so if you saw the video of the thieves coming down, which was almost comical in this little, on the furniture lift, her DNA was found inside there. And so her lawyer, from what we've heard, is saying that, oh, it was a transfer. She didn't have anything to do with it. But they had stolen this thing 9 days before.
Wow, yeah, that makes sense.
And it's actually kind of surprising they even let that much information out, because they are really, really tight-lipped. One of the gentlemen that was arrested he's going to court on Wednesday this week for a previous charge that he was arrested for something else. Then while he was in the police station, he damaged the cell and a mirror, and they basically let the other charges go. And now he's being brought up for this vandalism charge, and he's in court on Wednesday, but they've put a lid on it so that the name cannot be released. So everything, it's very different here than what people are used to. Like, if you are watching this from the States, I get so many people asking questions about it because they're like, well, why don't we know who they are? That's just not what they do here. So that's a big thing. I have had probably over 50 times people sending me pictures that they see on Instagram and social media of the quote unquote hot bandits, that there's these guys that they are saying are the jewel heist. And one of the guys in some of the pictures is the guy from Gossip Girl.
I love that this has gone viral. It was like the guy they said was the detective at the Louvre, and it was just some stranger walking by.
Yeah, it's so hilarious. And so I finally had to reshare it this weekend and say, hey, this is fake. But it's funny, you don't see it here. It's like a huge thing in the States, but we're not really seeing that. But what's funny about that guy that was just caught walking, that was wearing, the hat and the vest and everything? The next morning, on Monday morning, and I took a picture of him because he and his wife and kids were walking right behind me. And you don't pay attention who's walking behind me, but she was wearing like really loud, like boots. And so she was like, clunk, 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 clunk. And then I just was standing there because I wanted to see if the Louvre was actually going to open. And then I turned around and I was like, I recognize that guy. Who is that guy? And he was wearing a fedora, and it was Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh, no way. Wait,
And he
is
was,
that the same guy in the Louvre?
no, but he totally looked like it.
That's so cool. You just like randomly saw a celebrity.
Well, I saw them, but what I did, I saw the guy that's in charge of PR for the Louvre, Alex, and I was like, huh, what's he doing out here? Because I'm thinking, being in that position is probably a pretty big day for you, the day after the heist. You, prob-
Seriously.
You probably do a lot of PR stuff. And then I see him walk out and I was like, I wonder who's he's. And then I turned around and I couldn't remember who it was. And then I realized I was like, I can't remember his name. And then I remembered it was Benedict. But obviously he was supposed to go in there that morning. And my friend that actually does do that, he wasn't contacted that day. So I don't think Benedict cut into the Louvre because it was ended up being closed. But it's pretty funny because he was totally wearing a fedora and everything.
You're like, that looks just like the Louvre detective. That's not the detective.
I know. I was just like, oh, I wish I did take a picture kind of from far away, but it was pretty funny. But so that's the good news. We know that the Minister of the Interior, Nunez, I think is his last name. He used to be the prefect of Paris, so he used to be like the top cop in Paris, and he got promoted to the Minister of the Interior. And he was in an interview this weekend, and he said that he feels very confident that they're going to get the jewels back. I don't know. That could just be, what he needs to say, but hopefully, maybe there is, they are onto something or they're close to information. They're very tight-lipped about what gets out here and what, I mean, obviously she would have known these arrests were happening 2 hours before when she was doing her press conference, but they're not going to say that. So it's a little frustrating that you don't get more, but it's actually in some ways I think better to control the actual story of what's getting out. And, there's not really a lot of leaks in that area either.
Yeah, and like we've talked about a lot, like this is just how it works in France. It's different from the States.
It is very different. So we don't, they've released like the names of lawyers for some of them, but they haven't released names or anything else like that. So, and I don't think when, like Kim Kardashian, when she was robbed in 2016, they just had that court case this past spring. And I think that, I mean, they called one of them the grandpa robber because he was older, but he was like 60. I was like, I think I would, if you're calling grandpa robber, I would think of him as being like 80.
Yeah, that's not grandpa.
I know. I mean, 60 can technically be a grandpa, but I mean, come on. But I don't know if, I think, I can't remember if they even I don't think you could have, um, I don't think you have cameras in courtrooms. I think it's just sketch artists and things. So it's very different here. And in this day and age when everybody wants, access to everything and you've got true crime podcasts and all that kind of stuff, it's just a little bit different. So hopefully we do hear something. Another interesting thing that I learned was Olivier Gabet, who is he's the director of the Objet d'Art department, which is the furniture and all of that and the jewels. And also he was the one who put together the massive, amazing couture exhibit, which we talked at length about. But he had an interview and it's funny because this was mentioned, and I think this is some really important things, but I don't see this mentioned any place. And obviously he knows. But when they stole the emerald earrings and the emerald necklace, they only got one earring. So one of the emerald earrings they did not get and is still in the possession of the Louvre, which, is something.
Yeah, I'm glad they only got one.
Yeah. And then the cases I talked to about last week, I think it was when I told you about the cases. And the cases, this was all done by Cartier. In 2019, Cartier spent a considerable amount of money working with the Louvre to redo the Apollo Gallery. And they also were, fundamentally involved in these cases. And so, a lot of people are saying, well, why, these are just so flimsy and why. But, I told you how they use these circular saws, and they cut through it. It just sliced through it. And we talked about how it made this basically slit, and then they were, ramming into it with their shoulder and it's some sort of a tool to get in. And then basically through this slit, they got their hand in and pulled out what they could. With when they grabbed the first case with is the Eugenie, and they grabbed the crown. The crown is not very big. They ended up crushing it with their hand to pull it out of the case. This is the piece of jewelry that they dropped on the way out. But when they retrieved it, it is missing one of the 8 gold eagles on it and a few of the diamonds. So hopefully maybe that eagle was in the bag with the others and they could get it back. But the police had that in their possession for over 24 hours, of course, because it was evidence, and they got it back to the Louvre. They say that they can restore it, but it'll probably definitely not be exactly at the same condition it was before, but they are looking at it now and hoping to restore it. So that was, when I thought, I mean, it's not very big, but the fact that they could just crush it so easily is really kind of heartbreaking, but glad that we were able to get that one back. But, the not getting the emerald earring, and I was talking to someone the other day, and at first when this happened, I think if we even listened to the first episode we did about this, it really felt, and talking to other people in the museum world, everybody's like, well, it seemed very pointed to what they got. But I think now that we know because of the cases and how they couldn't break into them, I think at that point, what they got is what they could. I don't know. I think maybe the first 2 cases being the ones hit were just because they were also closest to the exit and their entry. I'm not sure as much if it's just because of that's what they specifically went, like coming in with like a shopping list.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we've all been wondering about.
Yeah, so like the sapphires, when they took the sapphires that belonged to Marie Amélie, the wife of Louis Philippe, they ended up getting the tiara, one of the pairs of earrings, and the necklace. But I thought it was strange that they left behind, this brooch that's has a lot of diamonds in it as well. But I think it's all because I think it's what they could reach. And the same thing with the Eugenie case. There's a beautiful brooch in there, there's diamonds and really big pearls. And I thought it was strange that they didn't take that. But I think it's because they couldn't reach it because there was just that slit in the case. And another thing that Olivier said is that there's no glass on the floor. There's just basically a very fine glass dust when this happened
That's fascinating.
because nothing broke. And, you have to have with those cases, they can't be 100% unbreakable, because if there was a fire or something was happening, the firefighters would need to be able to get in there. And the Louvre has its own fire department. They're trained all the time on what to do and how to get things out. If there's, depending on which department, if it's antiquities, if it's Egyptian antiquities, what to do, to be the safest way possible to save those things. So, these cases really were, they would have to take, you can't hit them with a hammer. You can't, there's a lot of things. The circular saw, these, in some ways they knew what they were doing. But, again, there's been a lot of thefts in museums lately, and they've been using saws to get into it.
And I want to know like what kind of saw they use. It's pretty wild to get through that.
It's like an angular circular saw. And if you look on my website last week, for my newsletter too, I put a picture because you could see it on the ground. When I went down there the day it happened, and I went there and I took pictures, and then in the paper you could see this saw laying on the ground, and it's pretty big. I mean, it's not little, and it's a huge circular round blade. It's not like one that you just stick in and it's like a bread knife and goes back and forth. I mean, it's a circular, but pretty big. I mean, these aren't just lightweight ones, but they realized because there was some sort, they wanted to set the truck on fire and all this stuff they left behind in evidence, but they were able to get some sort of flammable liquid. At first they were saying gasoline. Now they're not calling it gasoline. They're calling it some flammable liquid. So, whether sometimes they could go right back to saying it's gasoline, but they had spilled that on there, but there was a guard running down the quay towards them. And so that's when they just got spooked and left. So they were going to set it all on fire.
And they got away.
But, all of the people they've arrested, one of the guys they just arrested the other day has been seen in court. He's been arrested and seen, 11 times. Most of those are all for theft. Every one of these people, 2 of them, knew each other prior to this. They were friends. Then you had the girlfriend and boyfriend. And they're all kind of from the same area in Saint Denis, but like over to the right. And there's parts of, Saint Denis gets a really bad rap because everybody's like, oh, yikes. But there's some that is a huge area in the north of Paris, and there's some really lovely, wonderful parts of it.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's just talking crap about the north of France, but north of Paris, but there's a lot of nice stuff too.
There is, and I've gone up to the Basilique Saint-Denis, which is right there in the heart of it, twice in the last few weeks, and it is amazing, and it is very safe. It's wonderful. So, don't it's not what some people think it is. But every place has its places you don't want to go, even Paris, and there's other places, and but some of them just get a bad rap, and that's definitely this one. Um, but we'll hopefully get some more information, especially since that one guy comes up for a trial this week. So maybe we'll get a little bit more. The first two arrested were not being completely divulging of things. They said some things, but they were keeping pretty mum on stuff. But I think because they got so much DNA, they had 180 pieces of evidence and DNA. And then with these arrests the other day, they got even more evidence.
Yeah, I'm curious to see who these people are if we ever will find out and what they look like.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll probably hear more about them, but they're all like very small crime, like theft crimes. One of them was in the past arrested because he rammed his truck into to steal an ATM. But there's just the fact that they found fingerprints on the window where they cut to get in. I mean, pretty much, crime 101 would tell you to wear gloves, I think. I mean, every single crime show you watch, it's like you'd want to wear gloves. But, and then the dropping things and leaving things behind. In some ways, it's like it's just kind of really sloppy. And obviously, these guys weren't, some mastermind and some huge heist. And we know that there has to be somebody above them that's kind of putting this all together.
Exactly. And soon it's all going to come together. And also, maybe we'll get the jewels back.
Yeah, well, that's what we hope the most is that we could get get all of them or some of them back. But, there was the theft on December 16th in 1976, almost 50 years ago, when two men broke in by climbing up the scaffolding in the southeast corner of the Cour Napoleon. And they ended up going in there first in the morning and breaking a window and knocking two guards out. They ran into the Galerie d'Apollon, stole the sword that had belonged to Charles X, that was covered with over 1,000 diamonds. That still has never been found. So hopefully that's not the case with this one.
And only time will tell. I mean, time's already flying, and we know that we're going to have more updates soon.
There is, and there has been, on the other side of it, we were saying just right before we started recording that, this thing is a lot of this stuff. Anytime you have these things at first, it's like, the 12 stages, it's shock. Right now, it's also in the political stage. Because when this first happened, Laurence Descartes, who's the director of the Louvre, that day that it was said later that she had given in her resignation, which is just kind of formality, to the Minister of Culture, Rachida Dati. And then she, of course, said, no, 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 I'm not accepting that. But since then, the first week it was, thoughts and prayers and supporting each other. And then this last week, it's been a little bit more of, survival of the fittest and every man for himself, because it's now, there's been Laurence had to go the first week to the Senate, and she spoke in front of the Senate and answered questions. And then last Tuesday, when the Louvre was closed, the Senate committee came to the Louvre to see and have an inspection. And one of them was saying that, like, she felt that she was back 100 years ago, like how backwards and old things are in the Louvre when it comes to safety and security. And that hasn't been a big focus. Laurence has said that it is, and that she's called that out. But more, she was calling out the fact that it's just an old building and it's falling apart. Not as much about the security. The guards, in the last 5 years, they've been cut 10% of staffing. The staff is not happy, and if you are going to be coming to Paris over the next few months, definitely pack your patience and hope, because with something like this, there will be strikes and they will not announce it in advance. You'll just go there some morning and the Louvre won't open, or it'll open very late. So the staff is really upset. I've talked to a few people, and they're not too happy because they're kind of felt like they were being blamed for a lot of this. And the staff that are in those rooms are there, of course, to make sure you're not touching things and things like that. But their number one goal is to keep people safe. And they did. Nobody was hurt that day. They didn't know if those guys had guns or whatever they had. So they got everybody out and they got everybody safe. And that is their number one job. But they're also really frustrated because, the cell service in the Louvre is horrible. There's whole parts, the whole entire Cour Napoleon outside, and that whole circumference of the Louvre, outside of it, there's really no cell signal at all. Inside, there's many rooms that are on ground floors, first floor, second floor, there's no cell signal. So that's something they need to fix too, because if there's an emergency, they can't even use their phones to call for the police because it doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a huge mistake.
Yeah, I mean, there's whole parts of it that you see people where they have a hotspot, a Wi-Fi hotspot, and then all the visitors are sitting on the benches checking their phones. And I'm in there a lot, and there's whole times that you have no signal on your phone.
Yeah, definitely. You would know better than anybody.
Yeah, it's just not a good thing. So it's going to be, I think if they're going to strike, they'll wait till December, because now, being in November and the school vacations are over here, it usually quiets down until around that week of Thanksgiving gets busy again here. And then the last 2 weeks of December. So for Christmas break, it gets busy. So if they're going to do a strike, they're going to probably do it at one of those 2 times, because they're wanting to get the attention of the museum. They rarely do them on weekends. So, and they usually, if they do it, it's a lot of times it'll be Wednesday, just because this is what I've always noticed. Same thing with Orsay. It's always the day after they're closed. So Tuesday at the Orsay, that's where sometimes you just hold your breath and hope they open, and Wednesday at the Louvre.
All right, guys. Well, you heard it here, and follow up on ClaudineHemingway.com, book a tour, and tune in next week. Thanks for listening today, guys. If you're interested in learning more about Claudine, her tours, history, and the beautiful photographs that she posts all over Instagram, tune into her website, ClaudineHemingway.com.